This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of these podcasts is to support and empower you. Every single one of these have started out with support and empower you, to empower yourself to have a great life, have the life that you want. If that's full of complexity and discomfort and suffering, that's good. Keep doing that if that's what you want. I totally encourage you to have that kind of life because there's something that you're getting out of it that's important to you. I've been there, done that. I thought I was living my highest truth and living in the suffering of what I was suffering with. And then it was like, hey, wait a minute. I guess maybe I don't have to suffer like that. Maybe I can do this differently. And then I began to do something different. Like I said, I think maybe I could do something different. I started to do something different. Did it make it easier? Not for a while. Because learning to do something different means exercising muscles that I haven't used before, maybe completely atrophied. And so learning to break habits of how I use those muscles, looking at patterns of being, like looking at things takes a lot of discipline. Changing those patterns takes discipline and exercise and energy. And so even though I wanted it to be less suffering and less struggling, it was still suffering and struggling because I was learning something new. I was learning how to be with myself differently. I was learning to discipline myself in service of having what I want, as opposed to I no longer wanted to suffer and settle and survive. I no longer wanted to live in the reality of that's all I had. That's all I had choices to do is just to survive. I know I have a way of seeing the world and being in the world that says, no, thriving, that's what we're here for, is to thrive and live in our highest, fullest potential for the fulfillment of our human spirit. That's the truth I live in, and yet the patterning and habits of 60-some years of my life had me do something different. So as I learn and train myself to do it differently, I become more disciplined about that because I see the value, I experience the value of discipline, where before it was like discipline was kind of a bad word. And you might go, well, how did you get a PhD and 3 master's degrees? How did you learn to be a therapist? How did you do anything without discipline? And we discipline ourselves the way we discipline ourselves. Each one of you is disciplining yourself to do what you do in service of having what you say you want. And when you want something different, now you have to discipline yourself to make changes that can be difficult or uncomfortable. And sometimes that's not so fun. So for instance, a lot of people eat poorly and they know they're eating poorly, but the discipline that it takes to change those behaviors and those patterns of eating differently, it's too hard. They don't want to do that kind of discipline, but they might discipline to do reading of the Bible or reading spiritual stuff every day, or the discipline of going running or walking the dog or feeding their children and going to work. All that kind of discipline may be easier, but the one that's the most difficult for them in this particular moment, the example is eating differently, it takes a lot more discipline to do that, or something that empowers discipline. So for me, I wanted something enough to begin to discipline myself to make that happen. And I'm talking about learning to not just struggle and survive, but actually live into the fullest potential of thriving. And one of my things I say on my bucket list is, I want to know what it's like to be the fullest potential of this human being in this human lifetime. Like, what is it that I can be? I have no clue what that is. I don't no idea what that means, other than if there's something that feels limiting or constraining to myself, I'm going to see if I can let that go so that I know I'm continue to expand myself into my highest and fullest potentiality. And that's what I want for everyone. And so to do that, I have to discipline myself to be present and mindful of my thoughts. If I'm hearing negativity, that's good. to notice, you've heard me say 70 to 80% of all our thoughts are negative in nature, negative in nature. So it's pretty likely I'm having negative thoughts. Those negative thoughts influence how I feel in my body, not only my my emotions, but my physicality. If I want to have a healthier life and feel more fulfilled, then I need to stop. I need to discipline myself to listen for those negative thoughts, and then begin to discipline myself to stop those negative thoughts. It's one thing to hear myself yammer on and on and on about whatever is the negative thought of the moment, and begin to go, stop, we're not doing that. Let's look at something, let's divert, let's pivot, there's some pretty flowers, or there's a bumblebee, or something that distracts me from that pattern of thought. If we don't have something important enough in our lives, we won't discipline ourselves. For, like I said, in terms of eating, people, because it's so normal to eat poorly, at least in the United States, that it's normal. It's like normal to eat normal foods that aren't good for us. So what do I have? Why would I want to do it differently? It's like, oh, my body is telling me it's feeling sick, or it's feeling dizzy or spinny or itchy. It's aching. There's pain in my joints when I eat certain foods. Am I willing to live with the aches and the pains and the dizziness and the spinniness and the itchiness? That's a choice. Right now, I'm learning to live without that. It's pretty cool to not have those. But that means that I have to be disciplined enough to want that enough that I'm willing to let go of the foods that are causing me that dis-ease. And it takes a lot for me to discipline myself to live that way. And this is true in terms of letting go of negativity, not only in terms of thoughts, but what I'm speaking. Sometimes it's fun. Sorry to say this, but sometimes, it's fun to diss people, to say negative things about people. I don't find it quite so fun now, but on occasion I will find myself saying something negative. I'm training myself and disciplining myself to not do that, because it doesn't feel loving. There's a dissonance in me that goes, stop doing that. That's not fun. It's not good. It doesn't feel right inside me. And so I'm learning to stop. So the point of this conversation is to say, you have to want something enough to discipline yourself to take action to make that happen. There's a level of accountability that's required. There's a level of responsibility to make that happen. Nobody else in this game of life can do that or will do it for you. And this is the point of all therapies, is to bring you to a place of self-accountability where you're willing to take actions because it's what you want. And this is the brilliant thing about life coaching for me, is people have to be accountable to have the life they want, enough that they're willing to take responsibility and then discipline themselves to make that happen. A lot of times in therapy, and people who are in therapy, they're still looking to make other people responsible for their ills and their woes and their hardships and their struggles. I've been there a long, long time, and it's taken a long time, a lot of discipline to stop making other people responsible for my choices and the way that I choose to see the world and the way that I chose to live my life. I separated from my husband about 8.5 years ago, and I was still pissed off at him for years because of who he was. I mean, just in terms of stuff. And took me a while to go, wait a second, you stayed. He was who he was. He just was being himself, but you are responsible for the choice to stay. It took a lot of discipline for me to say, oh man, I am responsible for that. I am accountable for my choice to stay. And then discipline myself to live in that truth rather than going, yes, but, and go back to him being responsible for my life being the way it was. He wasn't responsible at all. He was just being himself. I made the choice to stay. That's what I'm responsible for. And I have to be disciplined enough to look at that and be responsible for all the choices that I've made in my life. that have gotten me to be right here in this moment with you. And that's what I want for you, is to be clear about, okay, what do I want enough in terms of this human spirit experience that I'm willing to discipline myself to take some action, whether it's continued listening to these podcasts or read other people's books or whatever it is. What are you willing to do? You have to be committed enough to want it enough, and then want it enough to discipline yourself to take actions. If you're learning, it's no different than learning a musical instrument or, a particular sport, or you want to run a marathon. There's the discipline required to make that happen. The discipline to be active in ways that move you towards your goal, your outcome, what it is you want. So that's pretty much it for today. Again, what we're listening for is just that place of, am I disciplined? Do I want what I want enough to discipline myself to listen for where or when I'm not in alignment with my highest desire, my highest truth. So just take that on if you want. All right. If you're interested in connecting with me about coaching, coach training, please feel free to connect with me at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com, or you can visit my website where you'll find all kinds of information, blogs, videos, books, and other interesting information. Or you can look at Amazon for my books. I have a lot of books that are fun to read, I think, in lots of different languages. All right, big hugs. Bye for now.